Hello, welcome. My name is T. This is my first semester exhibition. I am in advisory with T, crew number 3. Today my exhibition is going to be focused around LTI, so this is my learning through interest. So everything that I share with you will be based on that experience that I had. This is a picture of the subject of the LTI. It is a kitten named Eclipse. So here's our agenda for today. Today we're going to be going through an icebreaker, and then I'm going to move into my big picture learning goals of empirical reasoning, quantitative reasoning, communication, social reasoning, personal qualities, my learning skills, some of my future goals and learning, and then a conclusion and a time for questions and answers at the end. So the first thing we're going to do is an icebreaker / teach a skill. So because my LTI is revolving around this kitten, the activity that we're going to do today is actually to make a kitten toy. And so the video here is just going to show you the process. Basically, we're just going to take yarn and wrap it around our 3 middle fingers about 150 times. If it's a little bit less than that, it's fine. If it's a little bit more than that, it's fine as well. And then we're going to cut an additional piece of yarn that we're going to tie around the middle really tight. So you're just going to tie it in 2 knots super tight so that it cinches in the middle. And once you get that nice and tight through the middle, you're going to take the scissors and you're actually going to cut all of those loops. And what that does is it creates a little yarn toy that cats can play with, because indoor cats need a lot of sort of like activity and stimulation, and so by having toys that they can bat around and chase around as if they were simulating what the real life is, that's what is going to happen. So right now I'm going to pass out it's just a bag of yarn. Just take whatever color you want and a pair of scissors, and then once you get your yarn, you can start that wrapping process. Like I said, 150-ish times around those 3 middle fingers. And then if you have a cat at home, you are free to take yours with you. If you want to send it home with me for Eclipse to play with, that's fine too. If you want, we can even potentially donate them to, a local shelter or something. Everybody got everything they need? Okay, so again, I'll just model it one more time. So you're basically just taking the yarn, just the loose end, and you're going to hold it over those 3 fingers with your thumb, and you're just going to wrap around your 3 fingers. Don't do it so tight that it's like breaking your fingers. If you lose count, sorry, it's fine. Just do a big puff. I'm like, cut the circulation off my fingers. And then when you get to the however thickness you want, you're just going to cut yourself another little piece that you can use to tie around. And that's when you get, let's see, I can't get my fingers out, in the middle. Just around the middle, kind of like you're making an 8. So you have a loop on the top and a loop on the bottom. Pull it as tight as you can, and then knot it. You can knot it a few times. James, it could probably teach us a better knot.
I don't remember my knot.
So then the tricky part is like sticking the scissor through all those loops. You may not be able to get through all of them at once. So if you just do it sort of in pieces, carefully.
Let me see.
So if you do more loops, you're going to get a fluffier ball. If you do fewer loops, you're going to get a less fluffy ball, but that's fine, because if anybody has cats, you know that they play with just about anything that goes around the floor. Bread ties. I used to have a cat that loved bread ties. Eclipse really loves to play with Sharpie markers, like she bats them around, which is really weird. Paint brushes she likes to carry around. She's an artist. Look, here, take this one to King also and see, and then take a video of which one he prefers.
Wait, you gotta take mine.
You gotta put them all in front of him and then like release the Kraken onto all the toys.
He's taking every single one.
Okay, are we ready? Yeah? So let me collect the scissors so that we put your trash.
They see like this and they die.
Yeah. And then you can trim. TJ went back and trimmed theirs down real nice and tight. That looks fabulous. That looks like fun. I think a cat would play with that. Oh, yeah. TJ. Oh, look at that one. It's cute.
Okay, so run after them and they die.
I like it. I did like this.
Too old.
I messed mine up.
It looks great, Arrow.
$1 in the braid line.
TJ, that is like a beautiful one. Okay, are we ready to move forward?
Wait, I need the scissors.
Okay, hold on. So let's refocus. So now, thank you. Oh, sorry. Let me go back. Thanks for participating in the icebreaker. And for those of you who are struggling, sorry. We could try again, maybe later. On to my big picture learning goals. I'm starting with my empirical reasoning. Remember that empirical reasoning is how I think like a scientist. So in this process of raising an abandoned kitten, there was a lot of things that we had to do that was from a scientific perspective. So one of the questions that I had to think about is what has other research shown? And so I did not know anything about raising an abandoned kitten. I didn't know about bottle feeding a kitten, and so I had to immediately do a lot of research up front. And so we had to look into what the research said about how to raise abandoned kittens. And so one of the things that you have to do is you have to use a kitten milk replacer. It's a specific kind of milk that's formulated for baby kittens, and you have to do it with a bottle. So these are artifacts of the items that I actually purchased and used for that process. We had to look into how frequently to feed, and all of this information came from a local organization's recommendation. So when we first got the kitten, we didn't know what to do with it, so we called this group. It's called 10th Life. It is a local St. Louis nonprofit organization that's like a cat rescue. And so when we called them to, originally it was to like come and get this kitten, but we found out that they don't actually take newborn kittens because it's so much work. And so their advice was to try to find somebody else who could foster or do it ourselves. And so their recommendation was to go to this website called Kitten Lady. And this is the website where I did all of my research. I knew it was a valid source because the rescue recommended it to me. And this lady does everything about kittens. Everything I learned, not everything, but a lot of what I learned about how to feed, when to feed, etc., came from this website here. So finding a proper website was important. And then other questions that how I used my empirical reasoning was, how did I collect information? So we tracked her growth. I tracked her growth. And so that is, you can see here, and this is another artifact that I have, Excel spreadsheet that has the date and how much she weighed. And so if you look at where she was when we first found her, she was 9.35 ounces. And now at her most recent vet visit, she was at 94 ounces, which means she's like 10 times the size of when we first found her, which is really awesome when you think about it like that. We also had to look at how to adjust the food amount. So as a kitten grows, they require more and more food, right? And so you have to pay attention to those weights. And so that's why it was important to track the weight, to know when to feed and to up that amount. We also had to track her waste to make sure that she was expelling you know, number 1 and number 2 appropriately, and that everything was working well, because with wild kittens, you never know for sure what's going on. And so that was some other information that we had to learn about that. So some of my strengths in empirical reasoning, I am a problem solver. I am willing to ask questions. So I think I'm very strong in that regard. Some of my weaknesses, though, is that I have too many ideas. I have a hard time narrowing in on the one that I want to try. And also, I don't trust other people to do it the way I would do it. So I want to do everything all by myself. So sometimes that is a weakness for me, and I need to work on that. For my quantitative reasoning, this is how I think like a mathematician, how I use numbers and things like that. So how can I use numbers to evaluate my hypothesis? So I first had to have a hypothesis, and that is that, can I afford the cost of the special anti-allergen cat food? So fun fact, my husband and my son are both allergic to cats. And so when she was coming into our home, it was, at first we weren't anticipating keeping her, but then they all fell in love with her, and so she became our pet. But what do we do to help them? And so we found that there is a food that has, bless you, a special protein embedded in it that allows for the binding of the anti-allergen, the antibody to this FeLD1 protein that cats produce in their saliva, and that's the thing that people are allergic to. And so it makes it a little bit more expensive, actually a lot bit more expensive than regular cat food. So I just am showing some mathematical formulas here to show you how I use my quantitative reasoning. So one of the things that I had to do first is I had to convert from kilograms into grams. And so I know that that equation is just to multiply by 1,000. So the bag of food was 2.49 kilograms. I multiplied by 1,000. That gives me 2,490 grams. Then I had to figure out how much food she was going to eat in a day. And so we took the total grams, or how many days the bag of food would actually last us. And so we took the total grams, which was 2,490, and divided by the amount of grams she's supposed to eat per day. That was 50 grams. And so that came out to one bag was going to last us 49.8, so about 50 days. Whoops. Oh, no. So then I had to figure out, what are we doing? I had to figure out the price per day. So I took $39.58, which is the cost of the food, and then I divided it, well, I did a division for how many weeks it would last and then how many weeks. So it gets me to $5.58 per week, which is not that much in the grand scheme of owning a cat. It's more expensive than if I was using a cheaper food, but I said, okay, I can use this math to figure out I can afford that, right? Another way that I used my quantitative reasoning was how can I measure its shape or structure? So the shape or structure that we're talking about here is a graph that I created that is her showing her growth. And so you can see each of these points when we were weighing her, and then that growth up to the weight that she is now. And if you look closely at the graph down here, there's a couple of places where the graph sort of plateaus. That means it kind of like goes even. Those are times when we were switching from just milk to the wet food and from the wet food to the dry food. And in those transition times, she wasn't eating as much because she was learning how to eat that in a different way, right? We were bottle feeding, then she was drinking milk from a bowl, then she was eating wet food, right? And so all of those new things that she had to learn affected her ability to gain weight. And so some of my strengths for quantitative reasoning is that I'm proficient in algebraic formulas. I'm also pretty good at unit conversion. Some of my weaknesses are budgeting, and I should have a picture here of all of the things that I purchased for Eclipse. That's not really good. So I see something cute and then I want her to have it and I buy it. So my money that I spend on a kitten is crazy. It's crazy. So I really need to work on that. My next big picture learning goal is communication. So the question that I'm answering here is, how can technology help me express it? And so one of the ways that I express all this information about Eclipse is through my social media. And so there's a few sort of fun TikTok videos that are like when she was a kitten. We have this, just to funny little dance party. We like to walk our dogs, and so she goes for walks with the dogs sometimes. So this is just sort of showing that when she was a little bit bigger. This is one of my favorites. It's sort of like the whole progression of like from day one when we found her, and how she grew up. That was in the comments. That's Lanadia from last year. Eclipse bit her on the ankle. So when she was learning to drink from the bowl and learning to eat the food and learning to drink water. So tiny. And then she gets real stealthy as she grows up. She likes to chew on everything. See, she likes a good paintbrush to play with. Bandit doesn't know. He wants to play. And then this is like one of my favorites too. So I use social media to help track her progression and how she's going. And this video has like almost 2,000 views, which is crazy because I got like 20 followers on TikTok. So that's really fun. Another way that I use communication in this is what is the main idea I want to get across. And one of the main things I want to do is to teach others about fostering kittens and abandoned animals and how to help them. But also I want to tell Eclipse's story. So one of the things I've been sort of contemplating is potentially writing a book, like a children's book, since I am an artist. Also, I have a student who's an artist who really helped a lot with Eclipse, and I think I might try to collab with her to do the illustrations, and I write the words. And so this is sort of just like a layout that I've been sort of like looking into, like how you would do the layout for a picture book and things like that. And this is just a mocked up, really basic, right? Maybe it's Eclipse, Megatron, Kyle, T'Challa, Jackson - Edwards, the tiny kitten with an out of this world name. Like that's just like a working title that I have. Because there's a lot that goes into her name also, which would be told potentially through the story. And so this is just another way that I can communicate about Eclipse and the things that I've learned through this process. Some of my strengths with communication is that I am a quick processor, so I'm like pretty quick on my feet with words and responses and things. Also, I'm very creative, so I can come up with things pretty quickly. One of my weaknesses, I have a lot to say, so sometimes it's a long story long, and so I need to learn how to be more succinct. This is a really recent picture of Eclipse, so you can see sort of how big she's getting now, and that look in her eye when she's about to pounce on your face. That's how they communicate, right? My next big picture learning goal is social reasoning, and so in this case, I'm answering a couple of questions. What do you think? What do I think should be done about this? So Eclipse was an abandoned kitten. A student found her at her bus stop. She was without a parent cat, and this happens often because there's a lot of strays around that are just running around. I think we all probably have, you know, some neighborhood cats and wild dogs and things like that, which is dangerous because they can carry diseases, and then they just are reproducing. And so I think that one of the things that should be done is that we need to have more efforts put into having pets spayed or neutered so that they do not reproduce so much in the wild. Another thing is that pet owners should have their animals microchipped for identification. That way, if they do get out, they're easily to find where they belong. Another question here is what social systems are in place around this. And so I found some information as I was researching this. Actually, if you live in St. Louis County, there is a voucher program. So if you get a pet or you find an animal and you want to have it spay or neutered, they actually have $50 vouchers to help offset the cost of that procedure, which I think is really, really awesome. And then there's also this organization called St. Louis Feral Cat Outreach, where they actually, if you have an area where there's a lot of feral cats, like where you live, you can reach out to them and they will come in and do this thing called TNP. So it's trap, neuter, return. So they come in and they trap the wild cats. They neuter them so that they will not be able to reproduce. Sometimes they vaccinate them as well, like from rabies and things like that. And then they put them back into the environment. Because a cat in the neighborhood is good because it keeps, mouse populations down and rats and other kind of vermin that can also carry diseases for humans. And so they're not terrible to have around. We just don't want so many of them. And so that's where that comes in. This is Eclipse after she had her neutering surgery, so she had to wear the cone of shame so that she wouldn't get to her stitches. She did actually pretty good with the cone. She was much more cuddly with the cone on than without. So we now know when we want her to cuddle, we'll just put the cone on and then she will come to us. But otherwise, she's pretty feisty. Some of my strengths for social reasoning is that I am an advocate and I'm not afraid to speak. So when there's an issue that I am passionate about, I'm willing to stand up for it. One of my weaknesses is, though, I need to prioritize my outreach. So I'm really interested in a lot of things. Like, a lot of things make me excited to talk about, and so I need to make sure that I prioritize those things of the most importance. Next up is my personal qualities. So the question here is, how can I be responsible? So in this instance, because we're talking about this LTI, I could be responsible by taking care of the kitten. So this kitten literally came home with me every day, came to school every day. She lived in a plastic tote for a bit because she couldn't even walk when we first got her. And then she progressed once she was able to climb out of the tote. Then we got her a pack and play, like a baby pack and play thing. And once she was able to climb that, we added a mosquito net over the top of that. And that actually is what she still sleeps in, the pack and play with the mosquito net at nighttime, because she does like to chew on wires and things, especially when she was really little. And so just to make sure she's not climbing on people's faces when they're trying to sleep or messing with the dogs, or she's getting messed with dogs, we wanted to keep her safe. So she's getting a little big for that now. And so we'll talk about that in a second. The other thing to be responsible is make sure that my cat has its vaccination. So rabies is transmittable between mammals, and so it's, if you have a pet, it is required in the county that you have updated rabies vaccines. That's your responsibility as a pet owner, and so that's how I can be responsible. Another thing for my personal qualities is, how can I work cooperatively with others? So I worked with students, like we worked together to raise this kitten. It was a student who found the kitten. We worked together throughout the school days when she needed bottle feeding, when she needed just some enrichment of play, things like that. And another way that I've worked with others is to build an updated enclosure. So I had worked with my husband John to build this. We used a bookshelf, so you can see the shelves are kind of staggered, and that allows for her to have more movement. So instead of the tiny pack and play at night, her litter box will be, because right now it's like a litter box and a little bed and her food and water, and it's all in a pretty small space, which was fine when she was small, but now that she's getting bigger, she needs a bigger space. So we sort of retrofit this bookshelf. We put a back on it, covered the back with carpet so she has a place to scratch. We put some rope things there, which is another area of enrichment. We had to add a door on the side, so inset hinges and attach hinges. We had to figure out a closure, so we used magnets that are inset into the wood so that when the door closes, it just magnetizes onto the frame. And because the frame is all metal, we end up using zip ties to add this sort of mesh on there. So at night from now on, she'll be able to have this, and we'll put like a food and water up here, a little bed, and then her litter box down there, so that she's able to stay safe at night. The dogs are safe. We're all able to sleep, but she can, move around a little bit more. So some of my strengths of my personal qualities are that I have empathy, I have respect for nature, and I have compassion. And some of my weaknesses are also that I have empathy and compassion, because what ends up happening is I just say yes to all the things. Which is dangerous because we don't always have the time or the resources to help out. So because this just happened with Eclipse, a few weeks after, there was a baby raccoon that was outside at school, and Tim sent me a picture of it, and immediately my husband said no, because he knew I would try to help this baby raccoon, but that raccoon was able to reunite with its family. So. And then learning skills is my last big picture goal. So what tools can I use to achieve my goals? So I was able to use research. I was using books, magazines, articles. I used a lot of YouTube. Like, I didn't know that you had to help a kitten go to the bathroom. I thought it would just go when it had to go. But in the wild, or in a real situation, the mom kitten actually has to stimulate the baby to go. So she will lick the back end of the baby kitten to make it go. Obviously, I'm not doing that, so we used gloved fingers, and you just sort of rub a little bit with like a warm, or just a finger or like a warm towel, and that sort of simulates what the mother would do, and then that causes the baby to go. So like watching a YouTube video of how to do that, because I was like, had no clue about any of that. How can I work harder to achieve my goals? So one of the things that I need to work on too is to set schedules, use reminders, prioritize tasks, especially when it comes to taking care of animals. There are certain things that have to happen at certain times, so you can't always just leave them. Cats are a little bit different than dogs, but still make sure that I stay on those things. Some of my strengths for learning skills is that I am curious and I am hardworking, so I am interested to find out new things. And some of my weaknesses are that I'm overcommitted and can be distracted. So very easily can be distracted. Future goals and learning. So some of my future learning goals is I think I might want to volunteer to foster kittens. Fostering is different than adopting. It's just sort of raising them until they're at a good space where another family can take them for forever. And so in that, there are background checks and home visits that have to happen. And so we're looking into potentially doing that in the future. And then after high school, which for me would be after teaching high school, when I get to sort of retirement, I think I might, I'm a little bit interested in looking into being a zookeeper. I had some connections with the zoo in years past, and they sort of had encouraged me in different ways. I might like to do some work with the Missouri Conservation Department because I do like to be outside. Obviously, I like working with students as well. And maybe so like a dream retirement goal is working in a national park. So like Yellowstone or Arches or some kind of national park, because again, it's outdoors, it's animals, it's nature, it's people, it's all these things. So some final thoughts on this whole thing. I never in a million years would have expected that we would have fully adopted this kitten because these two dudes right here are both allergic. And so in the beginning, of course, Nina always wanted a kitten. I have had cats when I was growing up, so I was open to that as well. But these two were the hard sell, and we didn't have to sell because they fell in love with this little bundle of fluff, and they did not want to let her go, and so that's why we have her. So I learned a lot through this process. I don't recommend it unless you have time to do it because it is a lot, but it was really educational for me and for all of the students who helped participate in that. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you. That's the end.
Yippee.